Okay, everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I have another video for you guys from Kage. This one talking about ranking the Akatsuki from weakest to strongest. Now, we did already watch another video from Kage where we saw a ranking of the Akatsuki from weakest to strongest, but that was done by CBR. And well, if it's CBR, you already knew it was going to be awful. So we're going to be watching this video from Kage where he himself is going to be ranking the Akatsuki from weakest to strongest. So let's go ahead and watch this video, and I'm looking forward to seeing who he thinks is the weakest and who he thinks is the strongest. I think the strongest is kind of obvious who it is. I mean, I don't think anyone can argue who the strongest member of the Akatsuki is. So
yo, what's going on, everybody? Kage here, and welcome to today's video, where I'm going to be doing a request that I've gotten a lot more than I ever expected to when I started this channel, and that is ranking the members of the Akatsuki from strongest to weakest. Though, despite the way I wrote the title, I'm actually going to be doing it in the reverse order, so I'm going to be ranking them from weakest to strongest, starting from the bottom and working up from there. Now, keep in mind, going into this video, that there's no real foolproof...
Probably pause every now. Although, also, I always get... or no, I always forget that Pain used to have this design, or this used to be how his eyes looked before we got the final version of the Rinnegan.
Objective way to organize these guys in terms of how strong they are. Another thing to keep in mind is that power scaling Naruto characters is a bit difficult because there's a lot more to it than how hard they hit and what they're capable of blowing up. So obviously I'm not going to be ranking these characters based on their physical strength alone. I'm going to be taking a whole lot of things into consideration here. And these guys...
Yeah, exactly. See, that's the thing that people got to remember in terms of when it comes to pitting Naruto characters against each other, is that while yes, one person may have more power against the other, you also got to remember that that's not the only factor in a fight. So for example, let's say you put a six-pass Naruto against like two Rinnegan and Rinne Sharingan Madara. You could make the argument that because Madara would have more like raw power than Naruto does, that doesn't necessarily mean that Naruto can't edge out a victory. You see what I mean? It's like you got to take other things into consideration. Like, for example, how Naruto fights. You know, a lot of people have talked about how one of the things that makes Naruto a difficult opponent is that he's completely unpredictable. You never know what this guy's going to do. And that makes him a difficult opponent for even geniuses like Sasuke or Madara or literally any fighter. Like, his unpredictable nature could help him edge out the victory. So that's why you got to take other things into consideration when it comes to like who would win between these two, other than just, oh well, this person's clearly has more power, so they would win. Unless there's like a significant power gap. Like, let's say for example you've got Naruto and Sasuke against someone like Ishiki, then like their intelligence wouldn't really matter because they can't like overpower this guy. He's too fast and he's too strong for them to be able to do anything.
Guys are essentially going to be ordered based on who I think is capable of winning a fight against everybody placed beneath them. I know there's no way I'm going to be able to please everybody with this video. No matter how I rank the Akatsuki members, somebody's going to get pissed off, but that's unavoidable. I'm just going to do my best and hope you guys enjoy the video. So without further ado, let's just get started. So first up, we have Zetsu at the bottom of the list. No surprise here, I don't really need to explain myself. Even in the series' earlier days when his origins hadn't been revealed, it was still pretty clear that Zetsu wasn't meant to be taken too seriously as a fighter, and that he worked as the organization's intel guy. He just gathered information and didn't really do much fighting himself. Now, that isn't to say that he's completely irrelevant. Zetsu, or at least one half of him anyway, should be given loads of credit for essentially creating the Akatsuki and successfully convincing all of his founders and leaders and anybody else he deemed necessary to follow his cause and unknowingly help him revive Kaguya. If you want to put Zetsu at the top of this list just because he's an extension of Kaguya's will, then I guess by all means do that. But since this guy was seriously afraid that Kakashi and Minato could both kill him in like 2 seconds, and further taking into account that this Minato didn't have both of his arms, it's pretty safe to say that Zetsu's not all that tough. Moving on, up next we have Hidan, and while Hidan is probably the most physically gifted member of the Akatsuki, just because he's immortal and he can't die unless he starves to death, most people agree that his showings aren't really that impressive, and he's easily the least intimidating member of the Akatsuki. If Kakuzu hadn't been with him in the battle against Asuma, Shikamaru, Kotetsu, and Izumo, that would have been it for him. After Asuma decapitated him, he would have been done for. Not to mention he got dispatched pretty easily by Shikamaru, and granted this was a Shikamaru with loads of prep time, but all it took to kill kill this guy were a couple paper bombs. Well, okay, a lot more than a couple of paper bombs, but
also,
nowhere
he
near
still
as
didn't
many
actually
as
die.
the 600 billion Konan attempted to use to kill Toby. And while Hidan's ritual jutsu is pretty scary, and not something that most characters in the Naruto world would want to go up against, anybody quick enough to dodge his scythe is safe from being affected by it. I think I can say pretty safely that if any of the other Akatsuki members, aside from Zetsu, were to go up against Hidan with full intel, they would be able to get rid of him pretty quickly. Coming up next, we have Konan, the paper girl herself, a possible suspect for the origami killer from Heavy Rain. A lot of people are probably going to be mad at me for putting Konan this low on the list, and it's not that Konan's weak, it's just that she doesn't have the feats or really the hype either to put her above any other member of the Akatsuki. I also think it's really important to keep in mind when talking about how strong Konan is in relation to other members of the Akatsuki that the only reason she's a member of the organization in the first place is because she was a friend of Nagato and Yahiko. Every other member of the Akatsuki was recruited based on how powerful they were and the skill set they possessed. Not Konan though, she just got in because she was a friend of the leader, or former leader I guess, I'm not really sure whether it's Nagato or Obito. Regardless, Konan is still incredibly powerful, especially with prep time, as she was able to create a literal sea of paper bombs made up of 600 billion of them, like I mentioned earlier, which would have been more than enough to kill Obito if not for the fact that he had Izanagi. Now, many people
Sorry, you guys know the drill. Gotta pause every now and then.
People have said that based on the little scuffle that Obito and Konan had before she opened up this sea of paper bombs, she's actually stronger than him even without prep time. But that's not necessarily true. I think the only reason she did so well against Obito in the opening moments of their fight is because Obito underestimated her, as he himself admits. Since if he wanted to, he could have just phased through all of her attacks. She isn't Obito level, but she does have plenty of other feats and abilities. She's capable of teleporting by turning her body into paper. She was capable of tanking a point-blank fireball jutsu from Jiraiya by coating herself in her paper. She's capable of suffocating people by coating their bodies in paper. She's capable of flying by manifesting paper wings. She can create deadly solid paper spears, and she can even create shuriken made from paper that work just as well as metal shuriken do. Now, all of that said, none of this puts her above anybody aside from Hidan and Zetsu, but again, not because Konan is weak, just because all of the other Akatsuki members are so absurdly strong. Now, this
again, this is something that people got to remember with this list. It's not that, I mean, yeah, it says from weakest to strongest, but that's only in terms of when you compare them to each other, like who's really the strongest and who's the weakest. It's like, for example, when you try to rank the Phantom Troop members from Hunter x Hunter. It's not that the Phantom Troop members, all of them are weak by any means. It's just that when you compare them to each other, some of them are obviously stronger than the rest. Like, that's just, it is what it is. Again, this isn't saying that Konan is weak. It's just that when you compare her to the other members of the Akatsuki, they're clearly just more powerful or a lot more deadlier. Well, that was redundant, sorry.
Where things get really tricky. I initially had Deidara placed a little bit higher on this list, and I know plenty of people are going to be really mad at me for putting him this low, but again, keep in mind that the people who are in the lower half of this list aren't here because they're weak, but just because everybody else is so damn powerful. So, okay, here's the biggest thing. From this point forward, a lot of the differences in ability between each subsequent member of the Akatsuki, it's gonna be really small and difficult to notice. Like, Deidara is not very far behind the person who's above him, and that person's not...
This was such an awesome fight. It's still one of my favorite fights in all of Naruto. It's just... It was so beautifully written by Kishimoto.
Very far behind the person above them, and so on and so forth. Anyway, Deidara is an absolute monster. Like, really, this guy's no joke. He was fast enough to keep up with the Tsuchikage in a battle in the sky, and both of them were moving so fast that an experienced Jonin watching from the ground couldn't tell what was going on. He was fast enough to avoid plenty of Gaara's sand attacks, quick enough to create and replace his own body with a clay clone before a QB-enhanced Naruto could land a hit on him, fast enough to avoid a blitz from Sasuke. And this is important because this same Sasuke, when he wasn't powered up by having absorbed Orochimaru, blitzed all of Team 7, including Naruto, Sai, Sakura, and Yamato, and none of them were prepared for it. His left eye is capable of seeing through Genjutsu. He has a ridiculously versatile arsenal thanks to his Sea Clay variants, including C1, which he uses to create various animals out of clay, C2, in which he creates a gigantic flying explosive dragon, C3, which was so powerful it nearly blew up the entire sand village, C4, which which destroys the bodies of his enemies on a cellular level, and C0, which is his self-destruct move that created an explosion comparable in size to a Jubi Blast. Deidara is no joke at all, and I feel really bad about putting him this low on the list. I mean, really, this guy's a freak of nature. He's had both of his arms ripped off before and didn't really seem to care when it happened. He had Toby lay out an entire minefield, then fell on his own landmines and survived, and he doesn't even have to use clay to perform his explosive jutsu. In his battle with Gaara, he just used Gaara's sand instead, so that way he didn't have to use up any more of his clay unnecessarily. I would love to say that there's something holding Deidara back and keeping him this low on the list, but really there isn't. Everybody else on this list is just so insanely powerful. So next up after Deidara, we fittingly have Sasori of the Red Sand, the strongest puppet master in the entire series, and now, I'm sure plenty of people are gonna be like, what? Sasori's fodder? Why is he?
No, he's not, guys. No, he's not.
He's not stronger than Konan or okay, look.
Calm
Here's a panel
down.
of Deidara
Just calm
literally
down.
saying Sasori is stronger than him. Deidara is so prideful that he literally killed himself because he was so pissed off that he couldn't beat Sasuke. I'm pretty sure Deidara was telling the truth here. And I don't think I really need to back the statement up for anybody who actually knows what Sasori is capable of. Like, yeah, he lost to Sakura and an old lady. He's fine, but like, no, Sasori is a powerhouse. One of the scariest fighters for anybody in the verse to go up against. Sasori has insta-kill poison that was only stopped by an antidote created specifically to counter it. 298 puppets at his
Yeah, it's like if they didn't have that, if Kankuro didn't do that move, or if Kankuro, if he hadn't survived and Sakura was there in order to analyze the poison, it's like, dude, both of them would have been dead easily.
A puppet body that gives him incredible versatility in both close and long-range combat. The third Kazekage puppet, literally made from that Kazekage's body, capable of using all of his abilities, including the legendary Iron Sand. The Hiruko shell, which on its own was able to deal with Kankuro with little difficulty. And apparently he took down an entire country with his performance of 100 puppets jutsu. Which isn't surprising. I mean, even if you take out the puppets, you still have Sasori's insanely powerful puppet body to deal with. And you might think, well, you can just blow Sasori up. But no! Sakura punched him to pieces and he just built himself again. It's like what Kakuzu did when Hidan got his head chopped off, except Sasori was able to do it himself. And for anybody who really thinks that Sasori truly lost to Sakura and Chio, first of all, Chio says that he let himself get hit by the final attack. Second of all, Chio had like the 10 strongest puppets ever created. Shikamatsu's 10 puppets, created by the first puppet master ever, which by themselves were capable of taking out an entire castle. Chio also knew everything about him, including all of his abilities and weaknesses. Once again, they had an antidote specifically created to counter the effects of Sasori's poison. I mean, once again, the only reason Sasori isn't any higher on the list is because everybody above him is just so nonsensically strong. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to add, when Sasori's brought back with Edo Tensei, he uses his puppet strings to control living people. I mean, there's really no stopping this guy. He's absolutely out of control. Now, I initially had Kakuzu way lower on this list. He was beneath both Sasori and Deidara. But then I went back, read through some manga chapters that had him in it just to brush up on him real quick, and remembered that Kakuzu is, like, it's stupid how strong this guy is, dude. The first thing that everybody brings up when talking about how strong Kakuzu is that he allegedly survived a fight with the first Hokage, and the third data book confirms this. The data books are a little bit shaky in terms of credibility, because they also claim that Heavy Sasuke is stronger than every member of the Akatsuki. But still, it says that after Kakuzu failed on his mission to kill Hashirama, he was tortured. Because he didn't really like his punishment that much, he stole the hearts of the village elders and then became whatever it is he is today. Now, even despite the fact that he has 5 hearts and can't be killed unless all of these hearts are destroyed, plain Kakuzu is, I mean, like, reading through these manga chapters, I was stunned by how powerful he was. You know, this big old gate guarding this temple, Kakuzu just punches it down. He and Hidan are staring down the Two Tails Marutabi. The Two Tails brings up its claw and prepares to hit both of them with it, and Kakuzu just catches it with both of his hands. Like, no big deal. Marutabi then proceeds to fire a tailed beast bomb at both of them point blank, and obviously Hidan survives. But Kakuzu does too, with no damage, I guess. Kakuzu also, like, blew up this gigantic chunk of the ground by just punching Shikamaru. He has this area of effect attack that may as well have blown up the entire forest that he was fighting Team Kakashi in. His tentacles have an insane range. His hearts are capable of flying through the air. He has access to all 5 basic nature transformations. He has a long-ranged form that gives him access to even more chakra. And after he took a Rasen Shuriken point blank to the face, he still survived for a couple seconds after that, long enough to say some final words. He doesn't have as many feats as Sasori or Deidara, but I think it's safe to say that he's more powerful than the two of them by a slight margin. Now that we've gotten into the top 4, it gets a little ridiculous. Up next, we have Kisame. Now, Kisame, I don't want to say that he's that much more powerful than Kakuzu is, but I mean, based on showings,
well, I mean,
I'll just go ahead and start running through what this guy has done before. Because, oh my god. So with a 30% water clone, he forced Guy to open up the 6th gate and was able to keep the rest of Team Guy, that being Neji, Jonin, Rock Lee, and Tenten, all trapped within water prisons. Water prisons created by water clones, created by his 30% clone, were able to keep all of Team Guy except for Guy in water prisons. And even while he was funneling chakra into those clones, Guy still had to open up the 6th gate to beat his 30% clone. And then even without his sword, Samehada, Kisame was giving 7th gate Guy a pretty solid run for his money. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Kisame absolutely destroyed B. The same B that went to town on not just Sasuke, but all of Team Taka. B.
Also, I would like to remind people that Kisame is the guy who Nagato is speaking through pain. Now, you could say that maybe this was before Kishimoto probably figured out who Pain actually is, or who Nagato is in his history. But this is the same guy who Nagato, again speaking through Pain, flat out said, "You're the one who has the most chakra out of all the members of the Akatsuki." All of them. And remember, Pain knows about Obito. He knows. And this is Pain, or Nagato, who has the Rinnegan and is stated to be a member of the Uzumaki clan. The Uzumaki, who are known to be born with larger than average chakra pools, or larger or stronger life force than the average human being in this world. And yet he still looked at Kisame and said, "You have more chakra than anyone." That means he has more chakra than Nagato. And you've seen what Nagato could do, which is crazy. Like, dude, Kisame is no joke. If he has more chakra than Nagato, who his the Edo version of himself, which remember is stated to be weaker than the alive version of themselves, was capable of taking on B and Naruto at the same time. Both B and Naruto, who at that point had sort of mastered their tail beast's powers. And yet, if it wasn't for Itachi, they both would have lost easy. Like, dude, Nagato was no joke. This guy had the Rinnegan, all the powers that come with it, and you would imagine all the chakra boost that it gives you, and yet he still looked at Kisame and said, "You have more chakra than any of us," including himself. Like, that should tell you just how insane Kisame actually is.
He was touted as the strongest Jinchuriki in the whole world, and Kisame made really short work of him. The only reason he ended up losing it all was because Samehada decided it didn't want to be loyal to him anymore and wanted to start working for B. He also created this gigantic floating ocean of water that travels with him as he moves.
Which, I'm not gonna lie, to me was kind of convenient writing by Kishimoto, just out of nowhere having Samehada decide to work for B and just abandon Kisame. Like, that to me just, it feels like he just came up with it because he knew that Kisame was too strong and there's no way for B to actually win. So he needed an excuse for B to be alive so he can, I guess, go work with Naruto and help him in the war. So yeah, it feels like Kisame only lost due to plot convenience.
I mean, if this doesn't all sell you on him, people call him the tailed beast without a tail. That should be just about all you need to know about this guy. Now, because Orochimaru was temporarily a member of the Akatsuki, I'm going to give him an honorable mention and just say this is where I think he would go. I don't want to spend too much time talking about how strong Orochimaru is, but, you know, he mastered Edo Tensei, was able to press Hiruzen, fought pretty evenly with four-tailed version 2 Naruto while severely weakened, and has a whole bunch of other crazy feats. He's also comparable to Jiraiya, who Kisame Kisame was pretty terrified at the prospect of fighting, and I mean, he's overall just a really strong ninja. But yeah, moving on to actual number 3. Above Kisame, we have Itachi. I mean, Itachi really speaks for himself, you know, Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, Susanoo, Yaramir, Totsuka Blade, exploding shadow clones, crazy fast hand signs, absolutely annihilated Kakashi with pretty much no effort whatsoever, was able to react to Kirin, fought hand-to-hand evenly with KCM Naruto, fought Sage Kabuto alongside Sasuke, and was instrumental in ending the 4th Shinobi World War. Really, nothing needs to be said about him. I think the only things about Itachi that I'm really going to need to heavily discuss are things that involve why he was placed at number 3 and not number 1 or number 2. But yeah, I mean, this guy is a total legend. Everybody knows Itachi's OP. I don't really think I need to go into detail. Now, above Itachi, we have Nagato or Pain, and once again, I think he speaks for himself, but also, like with Itachi, many people are going to be like, what's Nagato doing here? Why isn't he at number 1?
No.
Obviously, he's the strongest member of the Akatsuki, right? And, well, not necessarily, but he's still, I mean, it's Nagato, it's Pain, it's the guy with the Rinnegan. Like I said, I don't really think I have much explaining to do here. He has all of the Rinnegan's abilities, which, I mean, that includes the ability to rip people's souls straight from their body, summon the Ghetto Mazo, use Shinra Tensei, Bansho Tenin, Chibanku Tensei, summon all of the animals available to the animal path, manifest mechanical limbs, fire laser beams, missiles, summon the King of Hell, and insta-kill people, absorb ninjutsu, absorb chakra through direct contact. I mean, once you've watched Edo Itachi and Edo Nagato versus Naruto and B, it's kind of impossible not to acknowledge just how ludicrously strong Nagato is. You know, Naruto and
like I said, this is the Edo version of Nagato, which is confirmed, remember, the Edo versions are weaker than the alive versions. If this is what Nagato could do in his Edo version, his alive version would be able to do way more.
B just proved that they were more powerful than Tsunade and the Raikage, and got permission to go headfirst into the war, and then Nagato just swooped right in and started dicking on them. And I mean, Obito even outright said that, yeah, Nagato's invincible, there's no one capable of taking this guy out. Then finally, I think I have my most controversial placement on this list. At the very tippity top, we have Obito. And now I think if I was talking about Obito with the Rinnegan, a lot of people would agree with me, but I don't think that's exactly fair, because by the time Obito got the Rinnegan, the Akatsuki had fallen apart and all of its members were dead. I am talking about single Sharingan Obito. And now many people might be like, excuse me? That Obito is nowhere near as strong as Nagato, but bear with me, because he would definitely win in a fight against him. The thing about Obito is, I mean, Kamui's just really hard to deal with. If Nagato decided to use Chibaku Tensei, all Obito would have to do is suck himself into Kamui, and then that would be that. So really, in a fight against him, Obito doesn't have anything to worry about as far as setting up his defenses goes. But the biggest thing is that many people forget about how powerful Obito actually is with just his one Sharingan, because he didn't use the chains after his fight with Minato. If he had been fighting anybody except for Minato, with both the Kyuubi and those chains at his disposal, the fight would have been over immediately. I think many people missed the point of the chains completely, but the point of them was Obito would charge at people and then catch them by surprise by slipping through them using Kamui, and afterwards, the chains he was carrying would catch them from behind. They would be too surprised to react, and Obito would be able to
You know, I just want to say the thing that kind of bothered me about this is Obito, so he knows that Minato has the ability to use Flying Raijin. Did it never occur to him that he could transport here? You know, the knife is behind him, and this was just an obvious ploy to use it to transport behind him and hit him with a Rasengan? Like, did that really never occur to him? I don't know, it just seems a little bit weird to me that he didn't anticipate it. I mean, he knows that Minato was known for using Flying Raijin, so the fact that he never thought that he would use it just seemed a little bit weird to me.
Them by surprise by slipping through them using Kamui, and afterwards,
I mean, I guess you could say that he was kind of like arrogant and thought that, oh, yeah, I got it, I won, and it was that split second that Minato was able to take advantage of and be able to use Flying Raijin to transport behind him and then hit him with a Rasengan in the back and then mark him using Flying Raijin.
the chains he was carrying would catch them from behind. They would be too surprised to react, and Obito would be able to immediately turn around and suck them into the Kamui dimension, and that would be that. There's nothing anybody can do about it. Plus, Obito has this huge reserve of spare Sharingan just lying around, so he's capable of using Izanagi. Then he also has Hashirama's cells, so he has regenerative abilities. Plus,
and he has access to wood style.
His durability is, I mean, it's really a sight to behold. After having his heart impaled, becoming the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, and then having having the Jubi forcibly ripped out of him, casting the Rinne Tensei Jutsu, being taken over by Zetsu, having his mind assaulted by Madara, having the Rinnegan ripped out of him, and using his Mangekyo Sharingan in an attempt to synchronize his Kamui with Kaguya's dimensional portals, Obito was still standing and did not collapse from exhaustion and die. Yeah, I don't think any more needs to be said.
Well, I mean, some of those feats that you talked about was actually Rinnegan, was Rinnegan Obito and not like single Sharingan Obito. So I don't know if I would account those to Obito's feats. But yeah, I mean, I get it. But look, I'm not gonna lie, when I said that it's kind of obvious who the number one is, I thought that he would include Madara in this list. But I guess Madara wasn't technically a member of the Akatsuki, so I guess that checks out. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts as always in the comment section down below. I mean, for me, this seems like it's a pretty good list. I mean, there's nothing here that I would necessarily contend with. And I know people will probably ask me, well, didn't you say that Kisame was stated to have more chakra than anyone in the Akatsuki, which would include Nagato and Obito? Well, yeah, but like I said, it's not necessarily, this list isn't necessarily as to who has the most power. It said who's the strongest, which in the Naruto universe, like, power is just one factor. It depends on the person. So it's like you could take all the power in the world and give it to someone who's a complete dunce and has no idea how to use it, but going up against someone who is, like, let's say, an experienced fighter and actually knows how to fight and knows how to use what power he has, then realistically that person would win. You see what I mean? So it's like, yeah, Obito may not have as much chakra as Kisame, and we're talking about single Sharingan Obito. He may not have as much chakra as Kisame, but with all of his abilities and Kamui, like I said, it would make him the strongest, because Kamui's it's incredibly broken. I mean, hell, Kishimoto had to come up with some excuse for Obito not to use it while he was while he was the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, because if he had access to Kamui, like, yeah, it would have been over. Like, no one would have been able to do anything against him. Like, Kamui's just that goddamn broken. Anyway, guys, like I said, that's the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, remember to like, share, subscribe to help me get to 1,000, and check the description for links to this video as well as Swag Kage's channel as always, so you can go subscribe to him, show him some support, and watch all of his videos and any future videos that he uploads. And also remember to hit the bell for notifications to know whenever a new video goes out, because YouTube's notification system is still kind of broken. So make sure to hit the bell so you will be 100% notified whenever a new video goes out on my channel. But with that being said, guys, thank you so much again for watching, and I hope to see you for the next reaction. Bye for now.